everyone, I'm Melanie with Paint and Crafty, and tonight is Tuesday Night Draw Along, and we're going to be working on this sweet little spring lamb landscape. It's super adorable. I'm going to walk you step by step how to draw it, and then I'm going to be showing you some simple steps to add the watercolor to it. So the paper I'm going to be using tonight is the Canson watercolor paper because I'm going to be using watercolor. But anytime you have drawn your image, you can use whatever you might like to use for your medium, but I'm going to show you watercolor. And the other simple tools I'm going to be using is just a regular old mechanical pencil. I have a couple different erasers, nothing too fancy. And then I just have this little set of like a student grade watercolor is what I'm going to be using. So there are simple materials to be able to start going. Now, don't worry if you don't have what I have, just use what you might have and then just join in the art fun. And you might be using colored pencils, acrylic paint, those types of things. Once you get it drawn, you can do however you would like to add the color. Now, I do have a Ko-fi page, which is like a Patreon page. And so those people who are not interested in drawing, but you would still like to paint the image, you can go over to my subscription there, and I have a sketchbook subscription, and you can check that out. And I have all the tracers that I provide inside of there. Plus, it's just a nice way to support my channel too. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch this to being this direction. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and grid off my paper. An easy way for me to teach how to draw is I grid it down the center and across this way. That's just going to give you an idea of how big I'm drawing things and how to kind of center up your things as well. This is just a 6x6 piece of paper, but you can draw it on anything, any size that you want, but you can still add the grid lines just to help you be able to figure it out. So where I'm going to start first is I'm going to be starting my sheep face. So I'm going to switch over here. Maybe you can see the black and white. This will be a sample of the tracer. I just cut it down so I can able to get it into the camera size a little better. But I'm going to start here with this U shape here for my face. So I'm on my center line, but I'm shifted off a little way. So I'm going to be starting my lamb face over there. So let's go ahead and start that part here. So I'm going to start with that U shape right here. Come around. So it's going to be smaller at this area where my nose is going to be, and then get slightly wider as I travel up where the ears are going to be. I think I'm going to have to move that over just a tiny bit more because I've got to get that other ear in there. So I need to move it over. So I'm going to start a little wider, drop it down to my center line, come around, and then come up. Okay, now I think I have enough room left for my ears. All right, let's go ahead and put the little puffy top on the top, which is going to be this little part here where we're going to be creating her little lamb bouquet. So I'm just going to do a little puffy top right here on the top. This is just to give me an idea of where I'm going to be putting my flowers. And then let's add some ears, and the ears are just going to be sideways triangles. They're going to have a slight little angled down look to them to create that lamb look. Okay, so we have that part done. Now let's go ahead and add her little snout or her nose in the middle. So this is the part we're going to add here to give it a little dimension. So we're going to come a little wider here. And this would be like if I looked at this is the center of her face. I'm going to come off to the side and start a little wider here, come down, make a little W shape at the bottom to create her little split lip, and then come up towards the side. So I'm going to take a look at where my middle of my face is, and I can even do just a tiny little tick mark if I need to keep ahead of where my register points are. I can start wide here, then come in narrower. Then I'm going to drop down to my nose area. I'm going to start on this side, do the same thing, come in, and then this is going to be the bottom part of my nose, and then I'm going to make that little W shape here at the bottom, just to give it more of that split lip look. And she's going to have a little open mouth where she's got her little mouth open. So this is going to be, whoops, I'm drawing it off to the side. I have my paper off to the side, so sometimes it's hard for me to see where the middle of my shape is. Then let's drop down here and give her a little open mouth like that. All right, so we have our little part here. You don't want to get in too narrow. So if it gets to look too narrow, widen it up a little bit, so it's not too narrow there. Okay. If it gets too narrow, it looks more of a little less like a nose and more just like a little tiny little nose area. So you're going to want to make it a little wider so we have a little bit more room. So let's go ahead and stick our eyes in. So these are going to be off to the side of our head. I'm just going to make a simple little eye shape. So I'm just going to go up like this and then down on each side like that. And then I'm going to come underneath and I'm going to scoop down a little ways. So I'm just making a simple little eye. Now, eyes aren't necessarily supposed to be matching, but they're not going to be twins, but I always say they're going to kind of be sisters. So they could kind of look alike, but they don't have to match perfectly. So there's the top of my eyes, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a lid on the top. Now, sheep have funny kind of eye. They have their pupil goes this direction across their eye and not up and down. So it's going to be a little bit of a sideways one. Hello, my friend Jan. I'm going to do a little bit of a sideways pupil. And then I'm going to add that accent of my eyelashes coming in, but I'm going to have them going down to give her more of a dramatic look. I think I still want to make this a little wider. I'm going to make this a little wider here. Give her a little bit different type of a look. And then a little open mouth. Okay. She's looking cute. Let's go ahead and put a little bit of bouquet on the top of her head. This is just going to be really simple flowers. All they are is little round circles, a little bit of a ruffly type of a flower with a round circle. What I thought looked good is to have a grouping of 3 flowers over here and then 1 off to the center. And then I just popped in some little extra leaves that are going to be stuffed inside of there. So that is how I just did it. So you can add some flowers of whatever kind you want in there. And I put them up above her head too. So they weren't all just kind of sitting right on the top. So I went past her head. So I'm going to put some in there. Now these ones I'm making are a little bigger than the last ones I drew. I can never draw things the same twice. But you know what? I don't have to draw them the same way twice. They're always going to be different each time you draw them. Okay, so 3 and 1 off to the top there. I'm going to pop in a few leaves, and my leaves are just usually wider at one end and then come to a point. So they're just a simple leaf, nothing too fancy. You can add some up, some down. You can add more than one. You can have them travel over past the ear too. So you could actually have it come down into her ear if that looks good, or have them come up this direction. Whatever looks good. Okay, so we have our little face drawn, and let's go ahead and let's work on our body next. So our body is going to be more of a softened rectangle shape. I'm going to start with the rectangle shape first. I'm just a little bit above my center line. I'm going to keep my rectangle within her head shape here is where I'm going to start, and I'm going to be over on the off to the center line here. So that's where her back is going to be, and then her bottom is going to be a little past that T. So let's go ahead and start here. I'm going to start with her neck. I'm going to come down before I hit my center line. I'm going to curve it around. Then over here, I'm going to start similar to the same height, a little lower, and then come down this way. Okay, and as we come down, now we're going to start coming back just a little ways. So she's not straight up and down here. Then we're going to come across. We have to have some room for some legs, so keep that in mind. And let's come across this way. We're going to do her rump right here on the back side. Okay. There's still something. Oh, I know what it is. It's like, why does her face look so silly? Well, I forgot to add this part of the nose in, and I forgot to add the little lip there. So this is kind of just a short little squatty heart shape that's there, and then it goes all the way up to the center. It's like, why does she look odd? Okay, let's put this nose in and see if this makes a difference. And all of a sudden now, oh my goodness, now she looks like a sheep. I was like, something was not quite right. Let's add her little tail. Let's put her little tail here. So funny how just one little simple shape can make a difference in what your animal looks like. Okay, so I have her little body drawn in. These are little soft, little rectangle shapes. Let's add some legs in there. So I'm just going to add some simple legs. There's just 2 down here. There's a little bit of space here. It comes down, rectangle shapes. And the same here for these little ones. So let's add her some legs in. So I'm going to just come down this direction, then come up. I'm going to add just a little space over, come down. These are just really simple legs. There's nothing too fancy about them at all. And they don't even have to necessarily look like exactly like legs because it's just kind of a whimsical look. So let's come up here to the front and we'll do the same. So we're going to start here. We're going to just make sure they're kind of even at the bottom, over and then up. And then let's come down this direction. And these might even be covered up with my flowers and my grasses, and I may not even see them. Okay, there we go. Okay, we have our little sheep drawn. Let's go ahead and put in some of the landscape behind here. If you look, I'm about halfway in this little spot right here, this block right here. I'm about halfway. I just did a rolling hill. You can make this come all the way over if you want to. I'm going to be adding a barn and a silo in there. But I'm just going to make this little rolling hill here. You can make it as simple as you want to. You wouldn't even have to add the buildings if you wanted to. You could just add the rolling hills if that's what you'd like to draw. I'm going to take a look here. I'm going to look to see about where half is. I'm about right here, about where half is. I'm just going to do just this gentle little rolling line that's going to come across. And we're going to come there and I'm going to stop. I'm going to do my sunshine, and my sunshine took up a lot of my back sky here where it's a rising sun. I'm going to do that little half circle shape that comes all the way over and then touches that nice big sunshine look to it. I can get that to be a little bit more less slopey. There, I think that looks good. And then put your rays in, and what I felt looked kind of good is just to make sure that your rays have that where nothing's going like necessarily straight up. They're going to have off to the side. So kind of concentrate on that where they're not necessarily straight up, but they're going to have that feel of that they're going around your sun. So let's take a look here. I'm going to start off to my side here. They can be varied height as well too. So you can take up a little bit space of your paper. This is the tricky part when you get right about in here and starting to go around your sun. Our tendency is to want to go more straight. Okay, so I'm just going to put this one. I'm going to put this one in lightly. Use a light stroke with your pencil because maybe a lot of these you might be erasing if you're going to only do watercolor, or if you're using acrylic paint, you might just be painting over them. So it just kind of depends on what you're using. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my next little rolling hill over here where my little building is going to be set. And I just kind of did this a partial one, just a partial. And then behind my sheep is where I made my next longer one that came across. So I can even start with my longest one first. I can start here off to my side, come around. This is going to go behind my sheep and then down. And then this is where my next little short one would be. I'm going to start a little bit shorter and then come down about halfway through, up to my halfway line. So I still used my grid to kind of decide where my lines were and how I was drawing my picture. And that just helps me kind of divide it up. Let's go ahead and pop our buildings in there. So I'm just going to make a simple barn and a simple silo. So the silo is just a longer rectangle with a half circle sitting on the top. So I'm going to come here and do my silo. So I'm just going to do a rectangle and then do my half circle. So down at the bottom, just a little ways past, and then up we go. And there's my little silo. Nothing too fancy. It's just a suggestion. It doesn't have to look exactly like a silo, but it will read as a silo when you get done with your picture. Okay, so there's the silo. Let's go ahead and work on that barn. So the barn, I'm going to start with my side. So I'm going to use this hill here to build my barn on. So I'm going to be using that bottom line here to gauge how I'm going to draw the bottom of my building. So I'm going to come up. This will be the side here. Then I'm going to pop over. The next one is going to be here probably. And then let's go across. There we go. Erase whatever might be in there. You might have something inside of there. And then I'm going to do the front part of my barn. This time my silo is going to be behind, it looks like. I'm going to do my little peak. And then I'm going to come down, and wherever my land matches up, that's where I'm going to end it. Now this is kind of more of like a whimsical style, more of a folk art style. So it doesn't have to be correct in your perspective. It's just kind of got just a fun look to it. So don't get caught up in that it's not necessarily the right perspective. Just put your little fun building on there and enjoy that process because it has that real folk style look to it. Now I'm going to come at an angle. So however I drew this one, I'm going to draw this back one. And then I'm going to come across. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Now, if I wanted my silo to be showing more, I could always erase it and add it over a little bit farther. So that's what erasers are for. If you want to change them, you can. Now I'm just going to add a little simple door here in the front. And come across. You can do those little X's in the door, and then your brain is just going to read, oh, that's a farm door by putting those little X's in. I'm going to do a smaller one at the top for like where the hay mound would be. I'm going to do a little X there as well. And I'm just going to do a bigger door, a longer door over here. And all I'm going to do is just do a little X in there. And then that will read that it's a barn. Now we can get a little fancy and put a little cupola, I think that's what they're called anyway. On the top, we can add this little element here if we want to. And the way I do that is I'm going to start, well, it kind of look, I'm going to go down first, like a little rectangle down in my barn. You're going to erase some of it because it's going to go down on the roof line. I'm going to come across. Now I'm going to make my line go up my roof and then come up like so. Then I'm going to come across in that way, and then we're going to make a little kind of a triangle shape. Again, if the perspective isn't quite right, don't worry about it. That's just going to add to the whimsical nature of your drawing. Hi, Gloria. Thanks for coming on. All right, so we have our little barn shape all drawn, or I do anyway. Now I put a little bit of a few little trees in the background. Those are just kind of like a little lollipop tree where they just have a trunk and then just these little irregular ones. I nested them together, so they're kind of all three in a row, which I thought looked good in the background. Now I might have to lower this, or if I can keep this a little bit lower to be able to get my trees in, if I want to keep them there on that horizon line, because I didn't have enough room up by my son, so I needed to drop it a little bit. I might have to drop it just even a little bit more to get that to have enough room to be able to put some trees in there. Okay, there, it's okay, we can change it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do my little trunk like that, and then just kind of do my little lollipop tree look like that. I'm going to come in and do another little trunk, and then this time I'm just going to do a partial lollipop that maybe is a little shorter than the one I drew there, so it looks like it's going behind. Now I'm going to pop over and do another one. So this one I'm going to make a little smaller, so this is going to be another little partial one, a little bit shorter, and there's my little grouping of trees. Easy peasy, but it adds a lot of interest back there. Now let's go ahead and add a fence line on the background. Fence lines are pretty easy to create. I'm just going to do that very folk style whimsical look where I'm going to follow and put my lines straight down first. However matches that big line that I drew behind there, I'm just going to draw those up and down. So I'm going to take a look here, and I'm going to start with doing up and down lines, and I'm just going to follow the line that I drew in the back of where my fence line is. Okay, now the next step is I'm going to draw my lines going horizontally, but what I want to do is kind of do them individually, so not like all at once. So by doing them individually, that's going to give your fence a little bit more character, and it adds a little bit more interest if you do it that way. Don't worry about if they're exact or they're matching. It's just getting that little fence line created back there. Okay, there's my little fence line right there in the back. Now we have a few little sheep in the background, and they are super easy. Hi, Sue, thanks for coming on. So the little sheep are just little puff balls is what they are. Their faces are black triangles, and then their ears are pointing down, the ones that are sideways. This little guy is eating grass, so he's kind of similar. He's still got that little cotton puff ball look to him, but for his face, it's more angling down towards the ground, and it's just a little half of a U shape, like a little gumdrop shape on the end. So the key are these is to kind of make them small so they fit in and then they look like they're in the background, and having them a different size and a little bit smaller is going to create that illusion of that they're farther in the field. So I'm going to look here to see how many I have. I had got 3 in there before. Let's see if I can't get 3 in there again. So I'm just going to start with a little cotton ball shape, a little irregular shape. I'm going to come off to the side of my little cotton ball, off to one side, and then that's when I'm going to do that upside down triangle. And then there's going to be a downward ear and a downward ear. And then just the little legs. And we have a little sheep. So they're pretty fun to draw and they're pretty easy. Now this guy is facing this way, so I'm going to want to change it and have the other guy facing the opposite direction. So again, I'm just going to start with my little cotton ball, little puffy shape, come off to the side where my rectangle or my triangle will be kind of halfway on my little guy, give him a downward pointing ears, some little feet, and they can just even, you might only see just 2 feet instead of 4, which is fine. You see how cute they are in the background and how my little triangles are halfway off my little cotton balls. Now let's go ahead and do that last one. I'm going to start with a little cotton ball shape. And then this time I'm going to put my head lower, and all I'm going to do is like a little gumdrop half round shape. So it looks like he's eating grass. And that's all we're going to see of him because his little head is down and he's eating grass. And that's it for how simple they might be. Now let's go ahead and put in some flowers. Now you can add how many ever flowers that might make sense on your drawing if you have more space or you have more, want to do different types of flowers. They all look interesting to do. I just did some big whimsical flowers. And I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is what I did on mine. But you can create whatever might look good on yours. Okay, so I'm going to just start over here. I'm just going to do a big whimsical one. And I even had some of them off the page, so they didn't all stick on. So I'm just looking for something big, whimsical, easy, kind of just fun. They end up looking more like a pattern in my background. And then I just came down and did simple little leaf shapes. That's it. And then this one here, and I want some over my sheep too, because I want to make it look like the flowers are the very front thing, and there might be some that's in front of my sheep. So I'm just going to do a little daisy one next. So this is going to have some round loops on it. And if you run into that big one, you can decide, does it go in the front? Does it go in front or does it go behind? If it goes in front, whatever might be inside of that shape, just erase it. I'm going to come down. This one I'm going to do the leaves like straight out, like a whimsical look like that. Now I'm going to do this little lollipop flower here where it's a round circle, 2 circles, and then some divided up points in the middle with just a simple little bottom. Whatever might be inside of this flower, erase it because I want it to be in front. And then this one, I'm going to have it come up, and then I'm just going to do a bigger circle. Like I said, these are just really whimsical. And then I'm just going to do some dividing off to the side. Just fun and whimsical. And these leaves I'm going to have come up, so pointing up. So you can tell I'm going to have to erase some lines and have some things that are in the foreground, some things that are in the background. So I've got my 3. Let's pop over and do these next ones. So the next one I did kind of more of like a tulip look, where it's going to be this little barrel at the bottom, like almost looks like an Easter egg, but we're going to have these up and down lines and maybe just a little pattern in there. This one didn't have any leaves. I kind of concentrated more on just adding a little flourish at the top, which is something you could do too. So this one, I'm going to come here. The key to these are kind of, is if you make them different heights and different shapes, that's going to add the interest. So I'm going to come here. Do that little Easter egg, tulipy look to it. And then I'm going to have a design that comes across this way. And then there are going to be little flourishes that come this direction, just to add some interest that way. Okay, and then I've got one more. This one I did a little bit more creative center on it. So it has more of this like scallopy look on the inside and then some pointed leaves. This one is kind of going off to the side. So whatever might look good in your space. So I'm going to start with my flower. I'm going to want to make it a different height, so I'm going to come down just a little ways. Okay, and then I'm going to make some pointed leaves. Again, these are just real playful, nothing exact. I'm going to erase whatever might be in there. And then I'm just going to do that little scallop center to add some interest to my flower. And we're going to come down and add some leaves. And whatever's inside of it, erase it because of those, I want the flowers to be in front of my sheep. Okay, let's take a look. I'm thinking it looks pretty good. She looks cute. Now, I didn't do a lot of extra pen work in this original one I did. What I used was at the end, I came in and I used some of my Inktense colored pencils. If you have regular color pencils, you could add the regular color pencils too. You just normally would have to wait until your items dry before you would put your regular color pencils on. Or if you have gel pens, you could add some detail that way. Is how I added the extra texture like into my barn, the top part here on my silo. I added a little bit on her face, and then I gave her that woolly look with a little bit of colored pencil, my little pencil work. And I also did it for some of my little details on my flowers. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to go ahead and take my, my gummy eraser and erase some of these marks. I do have a heavy hand, but I also have to draw a little darker so you can see what I'm doing. But in order to erase some of the pencil mark to get the graphite to be a little lighter, I'm going to just use my gum eraser to pick up the graphite, which works really great for that process. So I'm just going to come in here at this. Oh, they work good. Let's go ahead and erase these lines. They get pretty dark. And if you were when you're doing this at home, you can gauge your pencil work a little bit easier, and perhaps yours will end up being a lot lighter because you can control your pencil work a little bit more. Mine might just have a little bit more pencil work in it because I'm trying to draw a little harder to be able to show you what and how to draw things. Drawing skill, I think, really does help. The more you practice it, the better you're going to get. And drawing actually helps carry over into so many other things as far as helping improve your painting, all those things. If you can improve your drawing skills, you're also going to improve your painting skills because you're going to start seeing different items and how they're built and shadows, and you're training your eye to see things differently. So tonight I'm just going to be using this simple little set of watercolors, and I always have a paper towel off to the side to be able to control the water, test my colors, all those types of things. And if you're new to watercolor, you definitely want to do a color chart, whatever kind of color paint that you're going to be using, whether any kind of watercolor, because it looks so different in your pan than it's going to look on your paper because of the translucent quality of watercolor. So you're going to want to be able to see and know what your colors are going to look like. Now, I do like using a little mixing pan like this, that's porcelain, to be able to put my colors in. It comes in handy because it's white, it's easily wipe outable. I can let my colors dry in there and use them over again too. So that's where I'm going to be starting. The brushes I'm going to be using tonight are the Velvet Touch Princeton brushes. They're just a kind of a nice brush. They're not super expensive. They're a great little brush. Will give you a I love the little tips on them. Hopefully if I can't set this someplace so you can kind of see, get everything rounded around here. Now I'm going to start at the top so I'm not dragging my hand through everything. So that's going to mean I'm going to start with my sunshine is what I'm going to be working on. And I'll save my blue sky to the end. I don't want my blues and my yellows to mix because I don't want a green sun. So I'm going to start with my sunshine first and then kind of work my way down. So I'm going to start here, and this is a bright yellow, but I'm going to start light. With watercolor, you always start light and then work your way dark. So you're painting the shadows is what you're doing with watercolor. And it's okay to leave some of the white brights of your paper showing through because that is where they're going to come from, is from that. The brightest whites are going to come from your paper underneath. Unless, of course, you're using some gouache or you can add some things on there. So while my paper is still wet, I used a bright yellow. I'm going to come in and pick up a little bit of orange as well. And I'm going to add that on there to let my colors kind of sit and blend together. So it's kind of called a wet on wet. So I'm adding wet paint to my wet surface. and my colors are just going to kind of blend together. Okay, so then I'm going to let that sit for a little bit. Now, if you have a lot of hard lines there after putting your color down, you can come in, rinse your brush off. You can do it either like a thirsty brush, which means you're going to squeeze the color or water out of it, and then you can kind of push and pull your color. Or you can come in with a slight damp brush and do the same thing and push and pull your color and soften some of those hard lines so you don't have a bunch of super hard lines. Okay, so I'm going to let that rest. Now I wouldn't want to jump in here and do my green here, because if I did that now, that color is going to seep out into that yellow sunshine, because wherever the paper is wet, your color is going to want to travel there. So you want to go to a dry area to start next. So I'm just going to start working. I'm going to do my little sheep face here. Now on her little face, I didn't quite keep it, but there's a line down here that would be more white, kind of an area where it would be the white part of where her little fluffy part of her head is. So I'm going to try to leave a little bit of that. Okay, let's go ahead, and I'm going to use a black first. Now usually your first steps of watercolor, you're mixing your color or your water to the color of your paint to about tea consistency is where you're going to start. You normally hear tea and milk is what a lot of watercolors will tell you. So I'm going to mix about a tea consistency of black. And watercolor dries lighter, so what you see right away, it's going to dry lighter. So I'm going to just come in here and I'm going to lay a little bit of black in this area, but on the front of her nose, I'm going to actually do a little bit of like a Payne's gray or a blue, just to add a different look to that area so it's not just all black. If I had just all black, I wouldn't see necessarily a difference of what's happening in her face. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to add it to her ears as well. I'm just going to scoot some of that black in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and pick up a little bit of like a Payne's gray, which is going to be in like this family is about where that set is, where my set is. It's kind of just a darker color of blue. And I'm going to go ahead and lay that in there, and I'm okay with it being wet next to it. If those colors blend, that will be fine. I'm going to try to leave just a little bit of light down the front of her face as a highlight. I'm not going to try to cover everything in. I want to pick up just a little bit more of that black, tap it in just around her eyes. Now around in her eyes, I'm going to make those brown. Okay, so I'm going to let that set for a little bit, and as you can kind of see, if you can see where my blue is running into my black, and I have a little bit of a hard line starting. So I'm going to want to come in there and kind of like tickle that edge a little bit, help that color just spread out a tiny bit so I'm not ending up with a super harsh line. So I'm just using a semi-damp brush, and I'm kind of pushing and pulling that color around so I'm not getting hard lines. Okay, that will dry nice just by leaving it that way. And then her inner mouth, where she's going to have an open mouth, I will put a little bit of that bluish color in there, but I'm going to deepen that area as well for her little open mouth. Okay, now I'm going to take a little bit of that blue that I just used, and I'm really going to water it down now. So I'm going to do even a lighter color, because I'm going to pop it into where her white part of her head would have a little bit of color, but I don't want it to be super white. So I'm going to do just a real light wash of the blue and just tap a little bit in there, but see if you can't remember to leave a little bit of the whites of your paper in there too, just to look that little bit of sparkle. Now let's work a little bit on her body. Now her body has some very light colors. There's some purple in there, there's some peach, there's some pink, there's a little bit of that blue that I put on her face. So she has quite a bit of different color in there. I'm going to jump up to a brush. I'm going to use my number 10 round is what I'm going to use there. I'm going to come in here and get this wet slightly, her body, because I want those colors to mix and play together and create their own colors. Now, if your face is really wet, you're going to want to wait to do this part so your color doesn't run all the way from your face. Now, I'm not looking to have total coverage of the water, just enough in there. by not having full coverage of the water, that's going to allow some spots to remain white because my color's not going to want to flow into wherever the water is not. Hello, Judy. Thanks for coming on. So I'm going to take a little bit of this peach color. It's one of my favorites in this set. You can tell because it's got the biggest hole in there. I did spray these colors before I started. I mist them lightly, so that kind of helps get my color ready a little bit easier. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of this peach, and I'm going to pop that in. That'll be my base color. Oops, I got something on there. And again, I'm not trying to cover everything with this color. I'm still trying to leave some white if I can. Then I'm going to pop in and pick up this little pink color, which is really a nice little soft pink. And I'm going to blush that in. I've got it mixed no greater than tea consistency. So I'm going to pop a little bit of this color in. Okay, and then I'm going to pick up a little bit of purple. So I'm going to choose this light purple over here in my set. And I'm going to have, let's see, maybe I got to pop over one, just a little bit more blue. There we go, that's a better color. Just a little bit of the blue purple. And then I'm going to tap a little bit of that in there. So all of these colors are still wet on my sheet. That paper area is damp. So by tapping these colors in and kind of pushing and pulling, I'm going to be making that real soft color on her. Now I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to let that stop and dry because I don't want her really super, super colorful. Bring your camera closer to the paper. Okay, let's see if we can't do that. Okay. Sometimes if I get too close, then it wants to focus on the camera wants to focus on my hands and not on the paper. So I'm always adjusting it, but we will see if this works, how this works. Now, I'm thinking that this is going to be okay to come up here and do this next layer of the green. So I'm going to go ahead and pop in a little bit of green. So I'm just going to choose a green in my set. For this one, I did kind of the lightest in the back and then moved a little darker as I move forward to give it a sense of depth. So this was my light, medium, and then kind of a grayish green that came forward. So I'm going to try to do the same here too. So I'm just going to start with my lightest green first. And I'm just going to swoop that in the background. And try to go around my flowers. Not get a lot of that in there. Okay, and then this is going to swoop here. Okay, and then I'm just going to pick up my next green, which I'm just going to walk down the set of my colors in my color set. And I'm just going to pick that next one up. And then I'm going to stick this one in here. This is almost like a Kelly green. There we go. And then I'm going to walk down the next set. So I'm going to come down and let's see what color I got next. And if your colors are like too vivid, like you get a green that's like really too bright, you can always add just a tish bit of the complementary color, which is the red. You can add a little bit of red to your green and tone it down and give it a completely different look. And that's what I just did with this one. I added a little bit of red into that color to tone it down because the next one over was really kind of a bright Kelly green. You're welcome, Judy. Now I can just come in here and add that next color in. I'm going to go around my little sheep here. I'm going to just kind of skip around them, put like an irregular line around them because I want to still leave them white. Let's come in here. And I'm going to skip in and around my little flowers. I don't want to get a lot of that green color underneath my flowers because I still want to be able to have that translucent quality of the white underneath and not dull any color that I might possibly be putting on the top. So I do want to kind of skip around my big flowers and go around them. Let's see where my little leg is. See if we can add that on there. And of course I didn't mix enough, so I got to add a little bit more. So I'm just going to show you, here's that bright green. So here's that bright green color. So that is really a bright green, a blue green or whatever kind of a color. But if I pick up a little bit of red and add that into there, I'm going to be changing that color. Well, this one got to be too brown. Let's do it again. I'll add a little bit more green into that. but it does dull your greens down by adding the complementary color to it. Let's see what color I got. I'm kind of sort of in the same family. This one is a little bit more gray than the other that I had mixed up, but that's okay. I can still come in, lay a little bit of that color over the one that originally I put on and make it all work. Make it all work. Because these ones are drying really bright in the background there. Maybe a little too bright. Like I might want to take those down just a tish. So I could end up taking that color that I just used now, and I could be putting that just a little bit over these bright ones just to tone it down, but I can still leave some of that really cheery color through there, but not have it all that cheery. And I can come here too and add a little bit of it on here too, just to tone them down a little bit. They were looking a little too happy in my background. But if that's what you like, you can go ahead and add it super, super happy, which is fine by me. I don't mind happy. Okay, so there, we have our greens done. We have all that on there. I'm going to work a little bit on this silo in the back now. And for my silo, all I did was use that blue that I did kind of on the front of her face. I used that same blue, and I just used that in the background. So I just mixed it kind of light. It's kind of a grayish blue. I put that on my silo there and on the top. I also use that kind of a similar color on my roof for my barn as well. So I'm just going to paint it in the direction of that. I kind of drew it. So I went back and forth this way. I'm going to do the little cupola thing, a little bit of that color as well. Okay, there we go. Now for the doors, I actually used gray. So I went in with a more of a gray color, just a real light wash, not a lot of pigment, just a little hint of color, because this building is in the background. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time worrying and fretting too much about it. It's more in the background. Okay, let's work a little bit on these trees in the background. So I'm just going to choose a happy little green for my little tree background. I'm just going to pop some of that green color in. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of a darker green right next to it to add just a little bit of hint of color. So while my color is still wet, I'm going to tap in a darker green. So I have two greens, and they're just going to sit and work together and see how they turn out. Just a little bit of green. Now I'm going to let that sit, and I'll add a little bit of brown to the trunks on there too. Now speaking of brown, let's choose a brown for the eye. Now this little set, I never have a brown I really like, but so I mix it. I take a little bit of all the colors that I have. So I have a little bit of that brown, a little bit of this brown, and I mix them all together to try to get a color that would work, because this set doesn't have the best of browns in it. And I always say that and I always complain about that. Now I'm just going to come in here and pop a little brown into her eyes. Okay, let that sit. Let's work a little bit on those flowers. I'm going to switch back to my smaller brush, and I'm just going to pick up some pinks and some greens and maybe even a little oranges or something like that to be able to put in there. I'm going to use some similar colors that I used on my sheep body. I'm going to use some of those too on my flowers. So I'm just going to mix them, and these are real simple little flowers. They're just, I'm letting the pencil kind of do the work for me for setting up the color, and I'm going to tap in a little bit of the peach, and then I'm going to come back down and add a little bit of the pink in it. This little set has some neon pinks in it too, which look great for tapping them in there. I love the bright neon pinks, and I'm going to pick some of that up actually. This little set has a neon color that's off to the side here, a little row of that. And I'm going to tap some of that maybe in the middle of my flowers just to brighten it up just a tiny bit. And even while my colors are wet, I'm going to lay in some of the green for my leaves. So I'm actually going to pick up some of my green that I have, and I'm going to tap that in there too. And I'm okay if that green and the pink and all of those colors kind of melt into each other. That's just going to add a little extra interest to her little flower crown that she's got going on there. Okay, cute as can be. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to work a little bit. Oh, I wanted to put a little bit of tiny gray on those little sheep in the background. Similar color to what I added to the door to my barn. I'm going to do that a little bit down here too. I'm just going to tap in just a tiny bit. Not even trying to cover them all up, but I just want those little sheep to have a little bit of color. All right, let's work on that barn. I'm going to take up a little bit of like red that I have in my set. I don't have a lot of reds, but I'm just going to choose a red. I'm going to start with a bright red, and then I can always add either a little bit of green to my red and dull it down, or I can add a little bit of brown to the next layer to add another little layer. I'm going to tap it to make sure I don't have too much going on here. And I'm going to come in and add that red to my barn. Got lots of little squiggles on there tonight. Now with this little picture too, you can take your time, add as many layers as you want. All the different layers that you add with watercolor really starts making a difference. So if you want to take some time and add a few more layers, it really will make a difference in your picture. So if you want to take a little extra time, I've added a little bit of green to my brown, or my red, just to darken up my brown just a tiny bit and make it more of a darker color. And I can also add more pigment, so I can use less water. And I'm just taking it straight onto my brush and coming over here and adding just the smallest bit of water. My barn is still wet. And then I can come in and add even a little bit darker red, just even to darken that up. Okay, that looks good. Now my roof and my silo are looking a little plain, but I might add a little bit more depth when I use my colored pencils in there, just to add some interest that way. Let's work a little bit on these flowers. So these flowers I just did very whimsical. So just choosing some colors, kind of like an orangish yellow, and let's come in here and do the same thing here. These are just play time. So choose a color, have a little bit of play time, experiment with how your colors and your paints mix together and blend together. It's rather fun. It's rather fun. Let's see, I can come in, maybe I'll do a little bit of red here, and that would bring it into my barn a little bit that way. I could maybe do this one a little bit red. Fun color to add. Let's maybe choose a reddish purple. And let's do it. My things are getting pretty full over here, but we'll try. Okay, let's add some reddish purple. These are just building up fun colors that might be however you want to make them. Just make it really playful, however you want yours to look like. I'll be adding a little bit more texture with my colored pencils in there too. Okay, so let's add, let's see if I can't add a little bit more. Add a little bit more orangish. Maybe I need to switch to blue this time. Let's switch to blue, or greenish blue maybe. Let's do that over here and add. Oh, my paintbrush was definitely dirty. That wasn't orangish brown that I got on there. Let's try it. I didn't get it rinsed out very well. Okay, let's try that color and see if that works better. It's definitely a better color. Now let's put a little bit of it over here. Add some of that color in. And maybe add a little bit of it over here just to repeat some of the colors, like so. Now I need to choose some sort of green for my leaves, and I did add a little bit more of the marker work, or not marker, the colored pencil work on here to add a little bit more interest to my leaves. I created it that way. I need to choose some colors for that one, but I was kind of waiting for my picture to dry a little bit. And I need to do her legs too. I didn't pop in her legs. They need to be a darker color. Okay, let's see. Let's do her legs. So I'm going to do those black, kind of like looking like when I did her face. So I'm going to do those little black legs in here. So she's got a leg here. I need to pop that in. And then she's got a little leg here too, because now she kind of looks like she's floating. Let's put this little leg here too. I'm just going to pop those in real simply. Okay. All right, let's add a little bit of some orangeness to my sun up here. Now you could do these in colored pencil too. I'm just gonna put some light little goldenish sunshine rays up here because I need to add my blue sky. That looks cute. And let's see. All right, since that's still drying, I need to let that dry just a little bit more before I put my blue sky in there, because if I put it in there too soon, it's would turn green, and I don't want a green sky. Hi, Cynthia. Have to catch me later. You love this one. Well, it's a lamb, and you were saying you really enjoyed lambs. So I'm going to be using these Inktense pencils, and they are a water-soluble pencil. They have really dark, rich colors on here. They're a fun pencil to use. But I'm just going to follow some of my background here and put these in. I'm not going to necessarily wet this pencil. I could and create more of a soft kind of look. I'm not going to do that on here. I'm going to leave it more of the pencil kind of look. And I'm just creating some field lines in here, contour lines, and following my background. So these ones I would go this direction. Back and forth, just adding some line work there. And I can come in and make some grass with these guys down in here. Adding some little grass in there. Now I can also use this as my fence to do some of my detail. You can sharpen these pretty well and pretty easily. And I can show you what this looks like if I wet them. I can come in and add the little lines that are a little harder. But I can show you what they'll look like if you soften them. Okay, let's do a little bit of water on them. So I'm going to take my brush, but I don't want a lot of water on it. So I'm going to get them wet, but I'm going to give this a squeeze so I don't have too much water on there. And then I can touch these lines and they're going to soften. So you can soften the lines a little bit by adding just a little bit of water on there and bringing the color out. So it's a great way to add a little bit more detail. I can also come in here and do these backwards, these lines down here as well, and I can soften them if I want to. Inktense pencils can work on fabric too. I've seen some beautiful embroidery designs that people have used with Inktense pencils, so they're kind of a fun little tool. Now I'm also going to come onto my sheep's body, and I'm going to take some of this kind of this violet-y color here, and I do have a blue, and I'm going to do some little scribbling, just a soft bit, on my little sheep to give her a little bit of fluffiness. I need to do that one flower yet. So I'm just going to vary up my little scribble marks. And let's see, I can come in with a little bit of the yellow. Give her a little texture. Now you could do this with regular color pencils too. The only thing it would be is that you won't be able to blend them out. Now I can come in with just a little bit of water, hit this, and then I can soften these back just a tiny bit. They'll get brighter when I add water onto them. This is just optional. You could even add little lines in with your watercolor just to create a little bit of extra texture. But I kind of wanted a more whimsical look for her. And I'm going to take a little bit of the blue that I have in this set, and I'm going to add a little bit more depth to her forehead, a little bit more texture coming around, and maybe even a little on her ears. I'm going to use the same pencil to do some of the line work on my silo in the very background. So I'm going to come down and do a line pattern this direction on my silo. Add a little bit of color, and I can add just a bit of line work back here on my barn too. Good excuse to do a little bit of scribbling. And again, you can go ahead and use water on there if you would want to use some water. Now I can come in here and add a little bit more scribble work to these flowers too. and I can add a little bit more line work to my flowers, and I can do all of that instead of using my micron pens. I can use my colored pencil. Okay, let's do a little bit here. My papers are a little bit more wet on the front part, so they're kind of actually softening even by just putting them on my paper because my paper is slightly damp yet. Okay, cool. Let's add, so you can get as much detail as you want on this picture and add whatever you want. So I'm making it into more of like a mixed media piece is what I'm doing. I need to finish this little flower here. Let's see what colors I want to use here. Let's put in a little bit of the blue. And let's pick up a little bit of the purple. Take your time on this and create what you want to create and the colors and the looks that you want. Take your time on doing yours. Let's see, I'm just kind of doing this a little fast because of our time limits. Okay, let's see. And I'm going to go ahead and put my blue sky in now. So I'm just going to choose a nice, oh, and I forgot to do the little, I could do that with my pencils too. I can come in with just my pencils and do the trunks on my trees if I wanted to add them on there easily. Let's do a little bit of blue for a blue sky. I'm just going to pop up and get this real kind of light blue. I need to clear out a spot to be able to put some color. So I'm just going to choose a light blue for my sky. And it's just more of a tea consistency. I'm just kind of going for a light color. And then I'm just going to start up here and scoot some of this around. I don't want to get a ton of it, and I got way too much water there. I don't want a green sunshine, so I'm just going to pop in. I'm even going to leave space around my yellow and not have it necessarily go all the way down and around my sun rays. Okay, if you do get too much on there, just rinse your brush off. Squeeze the water out so you can have more of a dry brush feel to it, and then you can pick up some of your color. So that's a light blue. I think I'm going to take a little bit more of a darker blue now. I guess blue, and I'm going to pop that in there too. Add a tiny bit more. And this is all just certain preference, however you want yours to look. Then I think I'm going to call her done, but she could have a lot more fanciness. You could come in with all different kinds of pins, your gel pens, your you could even use a little bit of metallic color on your here, whatever you wanted to do. So there's a lot more you can do with yours as you're building it up. And they always look different. They don't look the same. Oh, I wanted to put a little brown in her mouth too. I think I'm going to do that with my my pencils. I'm going to come down here and add her little open mouth look there. Tiny bit of water. See what I can get done, if I can do that part. That ends up looking right. Okay, she's cute. She's cute. All right, these are the two. I always say they're not twins, but they could be sisters, right? They could be sisters out in the field, and they can look so different, and you can add all the character that you want in yours. You could actually come back and use a micron pen in there. You could use a little bit of your Uniball pen, the white ink one. If you want to bring in back some of your whites, you could end up doing that as well. So there's lots of opportunity to make these little drawings your own and how you want to do it. Take more time and draw it more than once, because we always learn something. When we draw it the first time and we paint it, they're always going to look different, and you might learn something the second time around. So it's practice. The more you practice, the better you're going to get. And you're going to learn something about how your watercolor blends and your colors blend and the sets that you're using. So I encourage you to do it more than just once. If you have a sketchbook, put it in there and do it. And another good way too, way I tell the gals in my sketchbook group is when they have their drawings, you could make a copy of it and then actually either put it up on a window and then trace over it again, so you don't necessarily have to draw it again. Or if you have a little light box, you could do that too. I have one of those, and I really, really like it and enjoy it. It makes tracing so much easier. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Sue. Well, that is it for tonight. Let's see, I'm going to be doing, oops, I don't know where I did with them. I do have some other ones up on Thursday. We're going to be working on this one, this little pretty poppy one. So that will be the next one that we're going to be doing on Thursday. And then next week, take a look at the sweet little bunny we're going to be doing. And the little alphabet for Easter spells Easter is a bunny too. So I can't wait to share all of those things with you next week. Well, of course, on Thursday, we'll be doing those pretty flowers. So hopefully you'll come back. I am always live on Facebook on Thursdays at 6 o'clock Central if you want to join in live. And of course, the replays are always available. If you like to watch and then draw later, that's perfectly fine. Well, that's it for now, my friends. Thanks so much for joining me, and you have a good evening. Good night now.